Welcome everybody to the panel. Today we're presenting When Brooklyn Was Queer, telling queer stories in the age of immersive media. And I'm just going to throw it all to you right now. I want you all to give me a brief introduction and what brought you to this project. We're going to start with Hugh.
Thank you, Tristan, and thank you to everybody who's listening to this. I am Hugh Ryan. I'm the author of When Brooklyn Was Queer. It is a real honor to be here talking to folks about this today. I am so excited about the virtual world we are creating, but that's my role in it. I did the original research, I wrote the book, everything else. I am an appreciative onlooker.
My name is Wadooah Wali. I am co-founder and chief strategy officer for NewCanvas, which is an award-winning immersive studio. And I was brought into this project by my good friend Matt, who, we were just catching up one day, and we can get into that later. But I'm just grateful to be working with Hugh on this incredible project and us pushing and telling the story in this newly emerging space. And with that in mind, since I said Matt, I'm going to pass it to Matt.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. My name is Matt Jordan-Smith. I'm the head of development and production for PageBoy Productions, which is Elliot Page's production company. We are an award-winning queer and trans-focused, but really with the intersection of diverse and marginalized experience in media and film, and really expanding beyond just television and film as our main outlets. We really feel like there is a space in the mainstream for queer stories to hold that. So that is a mission of our company and a big part of our ecosystem. Tuck, passing it to you.
Right.
Thanks, Matt. I'm Tuck. I'm the director of development at PageBoy Productions. I've been working with Elliot and on his team since before he started the company even. So it's been a moment, and as a trans producer, this project and this company is really important to me. So excited to be talking about it here today. And to be representing a company and a person in Elliot who is so passionate about affecting change, being an advocate, and just making really good content and telling important stories.
I think my first question is, no matter where you stand on the fence of analog, digital, streaming, whatever your position may be, you have to admit that the goalposts have changed, and now we have virtual reality. So can you explain to the casual consumer, how do I incorporate this into my normal viewing experience?
I will just tell you that I'm sure that a lot of people missed Google presenting yesterday, their keynote, but these devices are coming to market. I mean, they're already here, and these companies are now creating more ways for it to be more accessible to people. So whether you have a headset, whether you have your phone, they're creating these cross-pollinated ecosystems. So it's important for us to be able to be in all of these spaces because, as you did, mention, the goalposts have changed. I mean, like, we're looking at a major shift in Hollywood right now, and so I mean, on a lot of these technologies, even if you don't have them personally, there are spaces that you can go to. I mean, and there are more and more of these experiences popping up. So as NewCanvas, we know and we feel, this is the future of entertainment, and it's happening already. It seems more niche right now, but there are actually millions of people that are using us. And so we just wanted to make sure that as these new spaces are being created, that there's content that exists that speaks to our community.
Anybody else want to add anything? Because I have so many questions.
Keep going.
Okay. My next question is, we've had so much content in the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years on drag queens. But you all are very aware that there's always been a drag king scene as well. Like, you've been to the shows, you've seen that everybody has a friend of a friend, even if you've just casually been to any LGBTQ umbrella club. So why hasn't there been more content for this? Because I think a lot of people are really interested to see it. And it's interesting because you all are really setting a tone and a blueprint that isn't really there. So how are you all approaching this?
That's a great question. You go, Hugh.
I was just going to say, on a minor point of view, from someone who's coming from the outside, from publishing, it's really hard to get projects that focus on women, on trans men, on people of transmasculine experience off the ground. It's not because they are not there or have not always been there. It's not because the stories aren't exciting or vivid or moving. It's because we live in a world full of misogyny. I mean, I think that's the base answer, right? And I am loving that that's where we're starting. We're starting with queer people of color. We're starting with transmasculine identified people, with female identified people. That is just such a great place to kick off a storyline. And like you said, something we don't see a lot of.
We're also seeing a movement. I mean, I think Murray Hill is bringing it forward. There is a drag king movement and a representation of transmasculinity in media across the board that is attempting to take spots in that mainstream that we're gunning for. We're a company that is obviously incredibly focused on that, and Elliot is leading that charge. So, but I do think that there is, from a drag king specific angle, a push that's happening in the current moment.
And I can just say that, like when I started reading the book and was thinking about bringing this project into VR, as a queer Black woman, that just jumped out of the page to me. And it was just like, if I'm going to tell this story, I want to see myself in this. And so and then just kind of thinking about the fact that there are so little projects that have this type of representation. And so the book is just a treasure trove of stories, but I was like, for this world, and especially, thinking about 1894, yeah, let's make it about the women. The women didn't have the right to vote in this country yet. I mean, Reconstruction had just happened and was still tearing up the country. I mean, so, I just thought it was a good moment to lean into and kind of open people's eyes. And also, the juxtaposed to the whole drag king conversation or drag conversation that's happening. I know, with this new administration, when we put our teaser to bed on February 7th, that was the first day that I looked up from having tunnel vision for months, and to see that, the Kennedy Center was being gutted and, drag was being squarely targeted. And so I was just like, holy crap, well, our whole project, this pilot episode is about drag. And so what does that mean to say that we're not welcome in these other spaces? So all the more reason for us to go into these other spaces and take up space and make things happen.
And I believe, like, at times like this is like the best time to educate the uneducated. And this is like when we're at our most, dire, so to speak. This is when the content is richer. This is when we're able to get it to people that would not even see it, because we are at a point now where people have to be able to express themselves. And how are we going to articulate that in the content that we produce? And this is such an interesting project. So I think now is like the perfect time for it. But how are you approaching it for people that are not educated?
Well, I can tell you that right now, I mean, especially since we just finished our teaser, so we're in this transitional place where we're locking our script and getting things ready to go into production for the full pilot. So, we're using this time right now via social media to raise awareness about the project. We're doing a little crowdfunding campaign. It's a little bit about raising money, but it's more about connecting with the community. And so we've also attached ourselves to two organizations, Free to Be Youth Project, as well as Drag King History, because the idea is to make sure that we're connected, and that we're helping ensure that our past and our present, as well as our future, are protected. So, I mean, like, this telling the story for us has always been, it's never just been about telling a cool story. It's really about creating a movement and raising awareness and just using whatever opportunities that we can. And so as we continue to move forward with the project, we'll continue to make new partnerships and just continue to raise awareness, because we want to make sure that when it's done, that the audience that we're creating it for knows that this project exists.
And
Yeah, and
my
I'll say
father.
that while you don't need to be educated to love a cool story, it's a fucking good story, right? Like we have these incredible drag kings in Brooklyn, in Coney Island at the turn of the century, a time when nobody thinks about drag, you know? And like you said, we don't even think about drag kings ever, but to think about them in that moment, it's exciting. There's going to be romance, there's going to be adventure, there's singing, there's dancing. We have an incredible playwright who's done off-Broadway shows, and Agnes Brinsky. We have an award-winning director in Yasmin Elayat. Like this is going to be an exciting show for even the people who aren't educated yet. It's going to make them want to be educated.
What we were discussing before everybody got on today, me and Hugh, we both lived in Berlin at the same time and didn't even realize it. And what was great about that time is you saw everything: gay, straight, trans. There were no pronouns. Sometimes there were, sometimes there weren't. Sometimes people were in transitioning, sometimes they weren't. Nobody cared. And you would have skinheads next to trans, next to Black people, next to Croatian. Nobody really cared. And that was, the stories were there because we were free to live them. So for you to translate that for a different era and bring all these other eras that came before us to this younger generation, what has been the biggest challenge between the generations? Because I'm an analog person. Like at my heart, at my core, I'm an analog person. So like for me, I would prefer to just watch it on a screen. So how do you get other people engaged in that and like ease them into it, so to speak?
Ooh, I mean that's a big question for the folks who know a lot more about VR and TV than I. But I will say this: I'm gonna have to jump off this call a little bit early, and the reason I'm gonna have to jump is that I'm taking my aunt to a Broadway show, and 40 years ago, she took me to the first Broadway show I ever went to, right? And it was incredible. Les Mis blew my mind, and nothing will ever replace live theater for me. And I went out and I was like, I'm going to read that book. You know, this show is amazing. And then I went to read the book and I was like, this book sucks. How the hell did this book become that incredible show? You know? And I don't think I'm ever going to love anything more than books, right? But that doesn't mean every book is the right book for me. And there are some projects that are going to be so incredible in other formats that they need to exist. I think queer history is for everyone, not just everybody who wants to sit down and read my book, right? And this is a way of getting this story to people who will never be interested in my book. And it's also a way of getting people to read the book once they've already watched this story and to try VR because they read the book. You know, like all of this is interconnected for me. But how we actually get folks to watch, that's a question that Wadooah, Matt, Tuck all have so much more information than I do.
Well, they can jump in. It's for all of them to answer.
Well, and just picking up, where Hugh left off. I mean, like the idea is that this isn't replacing one thing or another. And I know that like I'll actually pass it to Matt because this project is meant to touch people in whatever spaces that they are playing in, whether it's VR or some other avenues. But I will say that, our goal in our vision for this project is to, one, make it platform agnostic. So it's not going to be limited to if you just have an Apple Vision Pro or a Meta Quest or the new Google Samsung or whatever. So that's one way that we're looking to unlock it. And then the other ways, like I was talking about, are partnering with other people. So whether that's creating location-based experiences that allow people to come and travel to it. Either way, like I said, we don't want the lack of the fact that you don't have one of these devices in your hand to be the barrier, but we do want to celebrate this. And part of the reason for us telling it in this way is we see in 3D. I mean, I know you say you're an analog person, but really on the daily, you see in 3D. And that's why when you experience stories in this format, you feel it so much deeply, see it so much more deeper. And so like being able to tell the story that we're saying is Chicago meets Pose. I mean, in this very fantastical way, putting it, being in VR allows people to actually step inside and actually, feel a little bit more, feel a little closer to the stories and to the people that are experiencing it. So that's what's exciting, the ability to, like, especially with technology being what it is, people will, when they actually see the episode, they're not going to see avatars, they're going to see people, and they're going to see people in the context of the 1890s. In this fantastical world that we're creating. But I'll pass it to Matt and talk about, I mean, yeah, just, especially the approach of creating, this kind of cross-border kind of IP.
Yeah, we often think about this. I mean, being queer, being trans, being Black, being from different groups, these are all human experiences that we've categorized based off of our life and the way that we've lived them in society. But at the end of the day, the reason why we watch TV, the reason why we watch movies or put on a headset for VR is for that connection, that human emotional connection. That's what we love most about entertainment in that. And you have an opportunity to educate, you have an opportunity to create a conversation, you have an opportunity to entertain, and the intertwining of those things, I think, is the evolution of media. And just like everything, it's going to keep evolving. And so, even though you're an analog person, you have an iPhone, you're connecting yourself to the technological world because it's happening around you, and you almost are forced into it in a lot of ways. And what really drew us to this space, because we had not really explored VR yet, is a conversation with Wadooah about the retrofitting of equity that outside society is doing right now. We're working so hard to pass equality along to everyone, but in the digital world or the metaverse, whatever language you want to put on it, it's being built right now. And we have an opportunity to build it with that equity already there from the ground up. So we don't have to try to go back in and retrofit in that equity. And that is incredibly exciting for us as a company to have our hands planted deeply in that as it continues to evolve very quickly.
You're like accidental forefront pioneers juggling all these things at the same time. It's daunting, but it's exciting at the same time when you hear the story.
But
It's just
Elliot
like
was
you
also,
literally go ahead,
yeah.
sorry.
Oh no, no. I was just saying, Elliot was actually. I mean, I think was in the VR pool before Matt and Tuck were, right?
He loves it. He's on that thing. He's playing games all the time. I think when I think about like challenges that we face with this project specifically and putting it in out into the VR world, I mean, it's the same challenges that we think about when we are developing a TV show or a film that's living specifically in this marginalized space. Is that there's two obstacles that we have to face. Is that we have to, get people to buy in. I think people immediately sort of write off queer and otherwise, content of marginalized experience as being niche. And so we have to overcome that by making the best thing possible, which I think that this team is capable of doing. And I think that we're, well on our way to doing that. So that's one. You have to pull people in with quality. And I think that's undeniable. And then, the other thing that we have to do is sort of, what Matt was speaking to is make people see beyond, once they're in, see, the human connection that we're putting in place, that this is a human story. I think about drag specifically. Everybody's in drag in some way, at different points of the day, at different points of the week. Some people spend, more of our lives in drag than others. And so, challenging what that looks like and doing the kind of translation of exactly what you're talking about, Triston, in terms of like nobody was talking about pronouns, back in the day. There weren't these conversations happening the way that, and Hugh outlines it so well in his book, the way that the conversations about what queer and trans identity are and how we talk about them have changed. People are already struggling to understand what it means now in 2025. How do we get them to understand that queerness is, maybe less of who you are and more about what you did in the past? And how do you sort of translate that and bring them in? And it all sort of points back to the human experience of that. But I couldn't help but think about that from a content perspective as we were talking about sort of how we translate that into the VR space.
I think it's also it's of course it's entertainment, but it's also educational. And it proves that you can combine the two. And because this is a point in history that should be celebrated and people should know about it, just like they know so much about drag queens now, which is obscene because when I was that age, you had to literally go to the place to know these people. And now you can just Google it or it's on TikTok. They have access directly. But this is also the best time to reach younger people, a broader spectrum of people. So how do you approach like how daring do you want to be with your content versus how many people do I want to reach? Like you are literally, like, as I said before, you're writing the blueprint for what other companies and people that come after you will decide to do based on how you all are successful.
I mean, I can speak a little bit from a PageBoy perspective and talking about content. I mean, Sorry if you can hear that outside. I think that, we often talk about specificity internally. Our company exists at the intersection of specificity and commerciality. When we talk to studios and networks or any kind of distributor who's bottom line oriented, I think that they are thinking about how do we reach the most people possible. And the way that they do that is sort of watering down the specificity of the project. They think, okay, so we have to go back to what our sort of default is, which default, historically has been the perspective of white cis men. And I think that specificity, especially when it comes to marginalized experience, where whenever we encounter that, I think our answer is to dig deeper. The first thing that you learn in any kind of creative writing class at any level in school is that specificity begets wider relatability, just because folks won't understand, the specific details that you're pulling and that you're putting into your work. They'll be able to think of their own details and make those own connections to what you're talking about. And so that's where the relatability comes from. So I think the answer actually is maybe counterintuitive to some, but it's to dig even deeper into the specificity of experience so that people can latch onto it and learn and understand without it feeling spoon-fed and educational in that way.
And you have to think audiences are already doing versions of that, and they always have been. I mean, it's simple and sort of in its thought process, but like when you watch The Lion King, you don't know anything really about the lion's life. How do you relate to this thing that's animated in that version, but also like an existence that you just as a human being have no awareness of other than what you see? We're naturally curious, and I think inherently that is a good tool for storytellers to tap into audiences who don't necessarily have to see only stories that reflect their exact existence. I think part of the enjoyment of entertainment is you do get to see a variety of life, and I think that's what we love about it. So it's not that far off from the way people already are consuming stories. We just have, as a society, have over-labelized everything in a way that makes people feel anxious about what they should or should not. Does it defy their religious beliefs? Does it defy all these things that categorize in their head how they make choices on what they watch? But if you strip that away, you're just really hearing and seeing that human experience, which is really back to that core mission.
And I'll just add that the great thing about creating content in this space is that we don't have those same gatekeepers. We don't have to have the notes of it's too gay. Can you tone it down? You know what I mean? Like it's brand new. It's wide open space, and so we get to have the fun with it that we want to. And I know that we want to balance the education piece. So we definitely have taken copious notes. If you see my book, there's there's stuff highlighted. We're accessing Hugh's files because we want to make sure that the historical pieces are true. But from that, we're taking some creative liberties in terms of creating characters and kind of making it a little bit more lively. Bringing it to life in this space, and that's it's the way that my business partner and I think about NewCanvas is, and just the space that we're in is, this is like the moment in the 50s when people had TVs in their homes, but a lot of the content on that TV was basically radio programs being read. And it wasn't until the sitcom format was invented that we started to see stories being told for that format, for that particular device in a different way. And so we want to, VR lets us push this, push the storytelling and the creativity all the more. So, I think, we are definitely balancing, we checking ourselves because we want people to be able to say, oh, did that happen? And go look it up for themselves and lean into the story and the facts more. But at the same time, we're doing this in VR. So we're like, let's push the envelope and see what we could do.
I wanted to throw it back to Hugh if you had any words before you had to leave. You said you had to leave early.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've got to go to this show. But I will say, the other thing I think about, yes, we are telling stories that haven't been told before. but also, if you have ever read Shakespeare, you have loved a story about drag, right? If you loved The Color Purple, you have loved a story about Black queer women. Like, there is so much in our culture that I think conservatives particularly, but just people in general who are worried about, content that isn't universal, that they have to ignore in order to make that argument. We are already constantly telling stories about gender play and about people of color and about whiteness. And the people who are afraid of those stories, really, they're just trying to ignore every part of life that doesn't fit this like really narrow definition, even the parts they're already enjoying. I mean, what is Tu Wong Fu? Thanks for everything, Julie Newmar, right? These stories are part of our culture already. So that's just what I want to emphasize, that yes, we are telling stories that are specific and are different from what has been told before. But in truth, that has never fully stopped us from being in the culture. And people have always loved these stories. And if they would give us a chance, and particularly if the money comes through, they will see incredible stories that people will not be able to look away from. And that is a blessing. As an author, you live, excuse me, and dream that one day someone will love your stories enough to bring them to a new life, whether that's in the theater, whether that's in VR, whether that's just in their heads, and then they write you a letter about it. This is like a dream come true for me. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone on this call and everyone listening. And now I'm going to go run away and watch some live theater, and I cannot wait to watch the rest of this conversation. Y'all are geniuses.
If they so enjoy the show, enjoy yourself.
Hello, this is Mark Tio. I'm a journalist from Spain, based in New York City, and I'm enjoying so much this conversation. Really looking forward to it. And it's a very probably naive question, but I think it's interesting to me. Not only what VR adds to storytelling in general, but also like in this particular case, what do you think it can add to the experience of learning new stories and learning about history and the characters?
Yeah, I mean, I wish he was, because he does, the way he talks about Florence Hines, and that's one of the, in our pilot, we're focusing on Florence Hines, a character inspired by Florence Hines, who is one of the most well-paid Black women who was doing this in a time that she should have been. I mean, like that technically wasn't possible. And so what's exciting for us is, like I was saying before, the ability for people to actually experience, I mean, like, have these things around them. It's one thing when you're watching from a screen, there's a distance between that. When you put on the headset, you are immersed in the world. And so, to be able to see, a performance and be up close. Also, like I said, just the heightened feelings, you're much closer to the experience. And so, we're really excited about being able to open people's minds to, one, the story, but then two, actually being a part of this world and experiencing history from a closer perspective.
And there's a tremendous amount of it. We always joke that you could put your finger on any page in that book, and there is an entire block of stories you could go just from that moment. And he covers such an expansive amount of time that just if you think about the wealth of stories that we could explore within just this book, and we're only focusing on one specific era for our launching platform, but we'll be able to really unpack a lot more.
Can I ask, Tuck, you had mentioned that Elliot is a big VR person, and I think you mentioned mainly games or something. He's a gamer. I don't know. How did Elliot get involved in this? Did he read the book? Maybe I missed something earlier because I joined later. But who read the book first and said, this has got to be a VR, show series? And when did Elliot become involved?
I mean, we had read the book, I think first. I think that Elliot was aware of the book, but we were developing it in the television space initially. And it's something that we had mentioned to Wadooah when we, just had a meeting to talk about the ways that we might, be able to collaborate. And Wadooah immediately was like, this is a VR show. And that's how we should pursue it. And I mean, I think Elliot was on board from the start. He is very much in the space, loves games. I think he has a workout program on there that he loves to use. And so he's always looking for, new things to play with in that space. And queer history is something that he's really passionate about as well. And sort of to Matt's point, I mean, when the book was flagged for us and we were all able to read it, you really can open it to any page and be able to imagine the type of TV show, film, whatever, just based on that page alone. It's extremely expansive. So it had started out, in that way, and then just sort of took off from there in conversation with Wadooah. Matt, do you remember more about the genesis of it?
I mean, that's really the core of it. Elliot's use of VR, because he's on film sets all over the world. It's if he really enjoys boxing, and if you're shooting a 16, 18-hour day, you may not have the time to find a boxing gym in the middle of the world. So VR opened up an opportunity for him to be able to maintain what is important to him in his lifestyle. And that really begat the idea. He was immediately on board for VR exploration because he was so familiar with it, more so than Tuck and I were. And we really just loved the book so much. And then sort of the meeting of the minds of what the book could be in that space just unlocked a lot from there.
He also, I think, really likes the social aspect of VR. He's always like, I've got a new game. Do you guys want to play with me? Because we all have headsets now, because he was so enthusiastic about it. So I think, moving forward, obviously, this is the format we have for When Brooklyn Was Queer right now, but sort of the possibilities are really endless in this space. And being able to sort of share this with friends and be able to have it be a communal experience, I think, is really exciting as well.
I was just going to say, I was just happy to be a party to the party. PageBoy and our other partner, Mob Productions, already were down a path with this project, and so I kind of asserted myself in there because one, it's a great story, and our company is headquartered in Australia. So on our website, we still have that we believe in DEI. 100%. And so I was looking for a story that, that I really wanted to tell. And like I said, just seeing those first pages about Florence, I was like, this is the story to tell. But the other thing that was exciting about working with PageBoy is not just getting to work with my good friend, because we worked together at Warner Media, but also, being able to bring the prominence of PageBoy, so that we weren't going to just be another niche project. I wanted to make sure that, like working with going back to the quality, these quality creators that are out pushing and telling our stories in these other spaces, that we could lean into that and continue to push the story further. And, the idea is, like when we get out the door with our pilot, that, hopefully it'll unlock some other pieces of this project for continued storytelling around When Brooklyn Was Queer.
Mark, did you have another question? Is Mark here?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, how close are you to doing the pilot, and what's the status of the project so far?
So we are, like I said, we're locking the script. We're a little bit, So we're just taking care of that housekeeping right now. But right now, the goal is to have our pilot completed and be able to hit the film festival circuit in 2026. So stay tuned.
I like that. Congratulations. I think you're going to be fine. I wanted to say, if you could just, I saw the Pose quote. I love that because I think it is. But how would you, like, in a nutshell, just like throw it out there and pitch it to like the bystander, if you had like 15 seconds? That's always hard to do. I
know. Like, I was like, a while ago, because we were pitching this thing like crazy but I would just say, we invite you to check out When Brooklyn Was Queer. It's our storytelling around that takes place in 1894 about a famous drag king who finds joy and resilience in being themselves.
I'd buy it. I'd buy it.
I'm like, sorry, I should have had that. That should be in there as a producer, but you got. Anybody else, Matt? Yeah, I know.
Matt, did you want to throw his attempt into the ring?
No, I think you articulated it well. I mean, the exploration of that time and era, which we have not gotten to sort of see and experience, is really what you're walking into a world. It's like sort of the same experience that I imagine our grandparents who put on The Wizard of Oz and entered a new world. This is the new version of that, into an opportunity to experience something that you may not have gotten the chance to see before. And so Brooklyn is our door in.
And I'll just jump in with one more question. What other stories do you see out there that are like, oh my God, that would make for a great VR series or movie, or some sort of experience that you all talked about, how this isn't just one sort of genre. You could have like an 1894 hotel, like a recreation of a hotel with experiential moments, or yeah, I don't know. There's so many things stories you can tell, because you can hop through history, like, you have your own holodeck, basically. And I guess my follow-up question would be, will we ever get to having a real holodeck?
I don't know what Wadooah's answer to that question is. I think there are so many stories. I love your idea about a hotel. Like, we, early on in the iteration of our company, were early developing on an idea that was loosely based around the Dunbar Hotel, which is an historically Black hotel in Los Angeles, where the wealthy and elite Black community ran a very successful business. And it's, once again, it's a reminder. I think a lot of people take pieces of history and they adopt that as their belief system around it. And when you get exposed to the realities, you learn so much more about it. And sometimes that visual medium, which obviously VR is doing so incredibly well, gives us an opportunity to step into these worlds. We're going to do it in When Brooklyn Was Queer in this story, but you could continue that in many different ways as a window into a space that you may have pre-thought or had a pre-identity about.
Yeah, I was just going to say, what stories couldn't we tell? It's really the sky's the limit. But I mean, but especially with the intentional, being intentional about recognizing marginalized voices. That's kind of my jam, and especially in this medium that, like I said, there are no gatekeepers. So we're serving global audiences now. We're not just creating for random markets. So we want to make sure that we have the content that reflects these audiences that are leaning in. And the more fantastical and fun and groundbreaking that we can make it, the more that we can bring people into the space, and the more that we can, I don't want to say trick them into learning, but I would say expand their horizons. And yes, John, I absolutely feel like a holodeck in our lifetime is coming. Like I said, I was watching the Google thing yesterday. I will say that we were included on the wall, so I'm excited for things that are happening there. But yeah, it's just where technology is now, and where we're going to be in 5 years is going to look radically different. And so I'm holding out for the holodeck.
Okay, so you are a proponent of accidental education. Just say that.
Oh, yeah, I'm a Sesame Street kid. I was like Sesame Street, Electric Company. I was, like, give me the.
You were accidentally educated. Okay, I love it.
I am that nerd. Yes.
We like the term edutainment.
Yes.
Edutainment.
That's better.
Yes, we like it. We like it.
Oh. Does anybody else have any questions? I'm gonna do my closing. Unless there are any more questions. Anyone? Going once? Going twice? All right, then. Thank you for your questions. Everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, goodbye.